Open up the door, it's Dave!
Who?
Dave! D-A-V-E!
Dave?
Right, man, Dave.
Dave's not here!
What's on the agenda for today's video? Well, I'm going to take a drive up to the Walt Disney World Resort. I'm going to spend a night and then I'm going to drive back. But my goal this time is to not use superchargers if I don't have to. Remember on my last trip when I went up, I realized that I didn't have to use one on the way up. And on the way back, I was forced to because I couldn't charge to 100% before I left. So what I'm going to try this time is using some destination type charging, maybe the ChargePoint chargers or some others. And I'll tell you about how that goes so you can kind of get a sense of what it's like to drive the car if you don't have a Tesla or you're not using the supercharger. So let's get started and take the trip. I started off by putting my destination in the app just to get a sense of whether I could make it. Of course I can with 14%. Then I went into the car and I actually put in the destination in real time for what I wanted to go to, and it said that it would get there with 6%, which was kind of surprising to get to Disney's Animal Kingdom. 6% seems low, but it does take into account the real-world conditions and the car itself. So I drove for a while and it stayed at 5% for a period of time. Then suddenly it bumped back up to 17%, which I thought was great, but it was interesting that it made that adjustment in real time. Then I started getting the warning message to stay below 70 miles per hour to reach my destination, which I thought was interesting, but I suppose it has everything to do with the fact that it's keeping track of things in real time. So I went ahead and clicked on the energy consumption, and what I noticed was there were two factors. One was staying below 70 miles per hour would help me achieve my destination, and the other was the amount of wind resistance there was impacting the range of the car. That was interesting. So I went ahead and just kind of glanced outside and saw that there was a flag flapping in the breeze pretty hard. So clearly that was a consideration in my driving. So I went ahead and kept it at around 70 miles an hour, maybe a little bit more, and drove along the rest of the way. So I arrived with 16%, which was just fine. That's plenty of mileage to get me around a little bit. But I figured since I was in the park, this would be the right time to start charging with one of the EV chargers that they have there at the Animal Kingdom. So when I drove up to the toll booth, I asked the attendant where I could park my car to do some more charging, and she told me I needed to ask the next person I came up to, who was this person here. And I asked him, hey, can I do some EV charging up here? Is it possible? And his answer was, sorry, no, they're all full. Now, I've heard different stories from different people about when they say that they're all full, whether that means they're full, whether they're just trying to shoo people away, whether they're broken or whatever. So I went and looked at the app, and I saw that 2 of them were in use, which makes sense, and the other 2 were available, which doesn't make sense. So I figured I'd go out and have a look and just visually inspect it and see what was going on. So here's what I saw. So I made it here. I'm at Disney's Animal Kingdom. And unfortunately, the chargers are all in use. They use the ChargePoint chargers here. And I asked, but they're all in use at this point. Even though the app says that they're not, it looks like they are. So I'm going to walk over and have a look as I go by. But I've got 16% of a charge, and I'll decide what I'm going to do when I leave in a little while. I'll figure out how I'm going to work with it. For now, I'll just deal with it and go from there. So to locate the EV charging stations at the Animal Kingdom, you can see the entrance is right up there. You can see the tram up that way. This is the tramway that's behind me. Most of the parking is sort of in front of me. But there are 4 charging stations here. And as I said, 2 of them are actually out of service. 2 of them are working but in use. So this is why it's a challenge, right? It's because they're not working. It makes it really challenging to be able to charge, to bring your car and charge here. So here you go. Let me show you what it looks like right here, because it's right in front of me. I'm going to turn around, and as you can see, 2 of the spaces are taken up with cones, and it says no parking. The other 2 are those 2 right there, and they're both being used by actual cars charging right now. The charging one is right here, like that, and the other one is over here, and it appears to be broken. So you can actually see the screen is not functioning. It won't come on. It's not doing anything. Looks like it's got no power. It won't come on or anything. So there's no charging coming from this. Now these are run by the ChargePoint company. So you would think that the company would actually come out here and want to keep them running so they can make some money. But I imagine their agreement with Disney is probably a little odd. And as you'll see in a little while, there's another company that's doing some charging on Disney property that kind of changes the perspective a little bit. Since these are in use, let's go to the other parks and take a look and see what they have available, just to see what's there. Now I'm going to say that I didn't drive my car to all the parks. I wanted to just try and see what was there by taking the buses and everything else to get there. I didn't really want to have to go somewhere and then figure it out. Once I got there, oh, you don't have charging, and have driven my car somewhere else. It's just easier to take bus transportation. But I wanted to see what was available, so here you go. The next choice is here at Hollywood Studios, where there are 4 chargers, and actually I'm very near the entrance here, just so you have a perspective on where it is. But the 4 chargers, they all appear to be working in this case, which is kind of nice. That's kind of an interesting thing, because some of the other ones, they weren't exactly working. But these appear to be working. You got 2 people charging there, and looks like both are charging here in front of me as well. So right here, they're charging as well. So all 4 of these are working, so these are good ones to use, except of course, they're all taken right now. And then we go to Epcot. Now, if you look over that way behind me, you can see that that is Spaceship Earth there, and the entrance is sort of that way. So just around the corner there. But Epcot also has 4 charging stations, as you can see. So there's 2 charging ports here, each with 2 chargers on it. The problem here is a lot of times 2 of these are actually broken, and the other 2 are almost always in use. Come on, Disney, you can do better. 4 charging stations, that's all you give us? You know, that's kind of crazy when you think about it. It just doesn't feel like very much. So you have these charging stations here, and 2 of them are being used. As you can see there, they're being used. But these 2 are not working. So they're using these as preferred parking spaces instead of using them for charging spaces, which is kind of weird when you think about it. I mean, you have this ability to charge here, but they're not letting people charge. And these have been broken for a fairly long time now. And they do get filled up early in the day typically. And you know, that means that people who drive an electric car don't have a place to charge here on Disney property. For its part, the Magic Kingdom has more availability of charging. So you'll see that there's a couple of charging spots right here. There's an EV charger that's right here that one person is using. I think it's just a single charger, if I'm not mistaken. And that's not charging right now, and I don't know why. That's someone, I guess, probably charged their car up fully and it won't take any more charge. So that's one. And then there's a couple more that are actually over here. And I think there are 4 more over here. So Magic Kingdom actually has 5 charging spaces. And they're all full again, of course, because that's the way this works. But it's interesting the way they set it up, because it's kind of in an awkward place. We're in the main parking lot, so the Transportation and Ticket Center is right over there. You have to walk down a little bit to get to it, and then you go over and take the monorail over to the Magic Kingdom. So this is it's close, but it's not that convenient, right? So there's a car parked there that's not charging because he's not in a space. Then there's one charging spot right here. Where these 2 cars are connected to it. Actually, one car is and one car is not. The Tesla is not connected up. And then you've got another one over here, but you can see that they're plugged in and charging. So the 5 spaces are actually in use here, just like they were at the other parks. 5 spaces for a parking lot this size. I mean, remember, the Magic Kingdom parking lot is huge. I mean, it is enormous. Yes, and I know that car horn is annoying. Somebody must have lost their car. But you realize just how big this parking lot is, and just how few spots there are for charging. And it's kind of crazy. And so my options are very limited. Maybe tomorrow morning I could come really early and manage to get a spot and leave my car charging during the day. But certainly it's going to be not as easy as just showing up and asking if there's EV parking available, because there just aren't that many parking spaces that allow for charging. There just aren't. So I'm going to have to reconsider my options a little bit and see what I can do, given that I can't start charging anytime soon. And I have enough with that 16%. I can make it to the hotel and then get up in the morning and figure out what I'm going to do. I don't have to do anything right now, but I do have to consider an option and figure out what I'm going to do. So wouldn't you know it, the hotel that I'm staying in has a free charger that's available to guests right here in the parking lot. So I actually tracked it down. It's in the corner of the parking lot. It was just kind of out of the way. You don't see it right away. But once I found it, I was able to plug in for free and continue charging. So I'm doing that now. Now, the problem is it's a little bit slow on the charge. So it says it's going to take it over 10 hours to charge up my car. It's after midnight, and I want to go back in the park tomorrow morning, so probably won't charge it to 100% as a result of that. but perhaps I can find charging there at the theme parks while I'm in the park. So we'll see how this goes. We'll kind of play it by ear, but I thought this is actually kind of nice. It's a nice feature. This hotel actually has this, so I have an opportunity to do some charging anyway. So I managed to charge about 50% more in my car using that ChargePoint charging station that was at the hotel. And that was terrific. I think it was great. It got me up, over 60%, 65%, something like that. So, it's helpful, but it didn't solve my problem. So I headed out to the Disney parks this morning, figuring I could get a charge maybe at the Magic Kingdom. It's kind of early, it's before park open, but wouldn't you know, all the charging stations were full, or at least that's what they told me. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll have to figure out something else to do. And this is why charging itself is a pain in the neck. And I understand now why people who don't own a Tesla have a problem with charging. Where do you charge? How do you charge? When do you charge? If you're on the road, what do you do? There's just not a charging network that's set up that's good enough to make this work. And that's really the problem. So I see it, I get it now. It's kind of crazy if you think about it. So I'm gonna have to charge using a supercharger. I couldn't make this work, it just wasn't possible. I just don't understand why it wasn't possible, but it wasn't possible. Kind of strange. A quick check in the ChargePoint app tells me what I need to know. That one charger was in use. That's why it's blue. Those two were also in use. But what it shows is that these two are not in use and they're available. And when I click on them, it shows them as completely available, which was interesting. But when I went over to look and see what was going on, I saw that there were two cars parked there that were not charging. So from the cast members' perspective, they were in use, but they weren't being used. One other thing for you. I had planned to take you over and show you some charging stations over by Disney Springs, because they do have some chargers over there. But unfortunately, they don't open until later in the day. So that kind of left me in the lurch. I was like, well, what do I do in that case? I can't go in and see them because they're on the top floor of the parking garages. And that would mean that really, so if you could find a way to finagle yourself from Disney Springs to one of the theme parks, maybe it would work. But I guess it wouldn't if you can't park there until after 9 o'clock. Thanks to the dash cam, we can at least see where they are. They're on the road in front of Disney Springs. They're the big buildings like the one off on the left there, that's a parking garage, and there's one off to the right just behind the tree line, so you get a sense of where they are. But they don't open until later, so I can't do anything about it. Now, they're in the orange and lime garages, so let's take a quick look in the app. In the orange garage, you can see that it's run up by the Charge Up Corporation instead of ChargePoint. And they look like this. They're just there and available. They cost about 35 cents a kilowatt hour, just like the ChargePoint ones do. The Lime garage has very similar things, it's just in the other garage, and they have a similar sort of setup with a couple of charging stations there. Now, something interesting I noticed was I found a picture from when they were ChargePoint in the past. So apparently Disney is changing over to something new with Charge Up. Remember that ChargePoint does have a contract with Disney, and they do have some amount of chargers around different places. In fact, you'll find them at most of the resort hotels on Disney property have ChargePoint stations in them. They charge about, it's around 35 cents a kilowatt hour to charge, which is equivalent to what you see at when you're on as a supercharger. So if you're going to leave your car for the day, it's really not such a big deal because it's about the same price as it would be if you were going to leave it with go to a supercharger. The only difference, of course, is that at a supercharger, you're there for 20 minutes and you're on your way. One of these chargers, you're going to be there for 7 hours. So basically the length of time you're in a park. And that's why it's so weird that Disney doesn't have more charging spaces. It's just kind of strange that they didn't think this through. There's money to be made here. You're leaving it on the table. If you have charging spaces that are available that you can charge people a little bit of a premium for, I'm not saying you charge a lot, but if you charge 40 cents a kilowatt hour instead of 35 and you have 20 chargers, you do much better. You can make a lot more money that way. Just my opinion, of course. So flash forward a couple of hours and I'm deciding it's time to go home and I'm ready to leave, and I haven't gotten a charge in my car. And so I'm checking around through one of the apps. PlugShare is the one I use, not that I'm necessarily promoting them, but it's the one I use to look for different charging type stations. And there are some charging stations around, but nothing I can easily go to that would be any better than a supercharger. So I just decided, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna use the supercharger and just use the supercharger network and go home that way. And it's unfortunate because it's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to not use the supercharger, but I only had, the 60% of my car when I left. So somewhere along the way, I had to stop and actually do some charging. So unfortunately, that's the way it works out. So, as I've said in the past, Tesla's secret sauce is their supercharger network, no question about it. And the fact that they're signing on other people, car companies, to use the supercharger network says a lot about what they've established for themselves. There are a lot of chargers out there at regular intervals, so it's easy to get from one point to another fairly efficiently. Now, I look down this way, and if I kind of turn my head a little bit and look this way, you can see that there's a lot of Tesla superchargers, but further down, there's a couple of other companies that charge. One of them is FP&L, Florida Power and Light has a charging network that they've set up through Evolution. And I believe there's another charging network that's down there too. I'm not sure what it is, but you know, there are certainly other chargers out there, but this one is convenient. It's easy. I don't have to do anything. You know, everything's in my app. I just plug in and I go. I don't have to click start charging, anything else. Not that that's hard, but it's just one extra thing, right? When I went to charge last night, when I was at the hotel, I actually sat there and I said, okay, I clicked on the ChargePoint app, went in, found the charger, then clicked on start charging, and it says, are you at this charger? Make sure it says this at the top. Yes, okay, you ready to start charging? And then it turns it on. You know, it's like 5 clicks to be able to get to the point of actually starting a charge, where I'm like, here, all I did was just plug it in and I'm going. That's huge. It's really important that it's easy like that. So, in summary, it didn't work out at all like I wanted it to. I really wanted to be able to charge not using the supercharger network, but I couldn't. And I understand the frustration from non-Tesla owners or owners of EVs that can't use the Tesla network. It's really, really hard to charge your car. And I understand why the Secretary of Transportation, I understand why they got frustrated when they were traveling cross-country using an electric vehicle. It's impossible. It's not easy to charge. The best I could do was these slow chargers that were along the way, and those don't really get the job done unless you're going to leave the car for some number of hours, and even leaving it for, like, you know, somewhere around 7 or 8 hours overnight was not enough. It only got me to half a charge. So there you go. Anyway, that's my story, and I am going to stick to it.
What's your point, David?